Hi everyone, welcome to our Claris FileMaker training course on how to build a custom CRM in 30 days. This training is designed primarily for beginners or those of you who need kind of a refresher with the Claris FileMaker platform. Over the course of 30 days, we're going to spend about an hour each day covering topics from the very basics of the Claris FileMaker platform in terms of the tools, the products, deployment, security, all those things you need to know about as you build a custom application. So keep in mind that towards the beginning of the training, the topics are more basic in nature. And as we get towards the end of the training, they're somewhat more advanced, I would say probably intermediate level topics. Now keep in mind this special part of this training is that while we're not only talking about the FileMaker platform, we're talking how you can rapidly customize an existing free CRM that you can download today. It's unlocked. So taking that CRM and customizing it to your organization's particular needs. Now, a couple important links to keep in mind. One is that if you need a copy of FM Starting Point, the free unlocked CRM, visit fmstartingpoint.com and press the button. And then our system will shoot you an email with the current links to that CRM. If you're looking for additional FileMaker training, visit fmtraining.tv and press the bundles button. And that will allow you to get more of this highly animated and somewhat energetic training material to help you through the learning process with the Claris FileMaker platform. Lastly, if you have questions about the FileMaker platform or you're looking for some additional help, maybe some one-on-one coaching help, feel free to email us at support@rcconsulting.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I am Richard Carlton here at fmtrain.tv, where every day we're doing great FileMaker training. We've got a bunch of people showed up today. So today is about licensing. This is very, very similar to last year. Today I have Jacob Taylor helping me here. Jacob, do you have your camera on? Can they see your face, or are you just like
I do not have my camera on. I can add it if you'd like.
Well, that way you can see the voice. It's not the voice of God, it's the voice of Jacob Taylor, right? So
yes.
Licensing the FileMaker platform. This is about buying the FileMaker platform. We did this a year ago. It hasn't largely changed. We expect there will be some changes towards the end of the year, maybe. Claris is trying to figure this out, but at the end of the day, right now, it's kind of confusing. And one of the reasons it's confusing is I'm also going to bring up a browser here, and I'm going to make it sufficiently small, and I'm going to go to claris.com. And so I will reference this as we go. So step one on the licensing bandwagon, if I click over here, up front, let's talk about this. This is our progression of learning. Once again, for our 30-day basic beginner training, we assume that most everyone is over in this group right here, or maybe in this group right here. Some of you are very senior people. I know you're senior people. Just because you're here doesn't mean you're in this group, but our training has been largely designed for beginners or intermediates, or maybe that people that maybe you haven't used FileMaker in a while and you want to come back. Licensing conversation is a good conversation for you to make sure you understand. And if you don't understand it, before you promise something to your customer, take a step back and get some help with it. Everyone tends to get licensing confused with deployment, okay? And so, and deployment's an important question. And I think the big part is as you play with FileMaker, you download a copy of FileMaker, maybe you have a single copy, you're playing with it, you're running it locally. The progression of learning really is for everyone means that you build a FileMaker solution here, and a lot of beginners don't even share it with anyone yet, but somewhere in this area, probably between here and over here, someone sees it, they say, that's really great. And it's helping you, I built it to help me do my job, you say. And they go, well, can I get in on that action? You're like, yeah, I kick right? I use FileMaker. I'm a successful person. And so what ends up happening is that you have to park it on FileMaker server. And that's where the licensing gets a little bit more, and I see a question, Ed, I'm going to come back to that as we get farther towards the end with open Q&A. We have plenty of time today. So it's when you have to deploy and share with your users. Basically, Claris, and I'm going to say this very straightforward, they don't say this on their website, but you kind of get this impression, they don't want to sell single copies of FileMaker. They also don't want to give it away for free, okay? They have indicated that they want to someday give it away for free. When that actually happens and what the restrictions are on it have not been disclosed. Right. So I just want to frame everyone's mind. I had another gentleman who Claris had a webinar saying we're going to be going down the road of freemium. in the future. That's all Claris said. They said nothing else. And what people heard was, I'm going to get it for free. I'm going to get it for free tomorrow. I'm going to get it free and it'll do everything I want it to do and I can make run, blah, 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 blah. And they made no such statements. And so I've been urging people to go easy on what the expectations are, because people tend to hear what they want to hear. So understand for the time being, and we're still in the here and now right now, that Claris doesn't like to sell single copies and they don't like to give them away. And so if you go to their website and you want to get a single copy of FileMaker, it's $540. If you end up buying our training, you can get it for considerably less than that because we bundle it with that, okay? That being said, generally Claris doesn't want to have a transaction size that's really small. And so what ends up happening is that they sell their entry-level position, their entry-level pack for a business is 5 users. And that gets you a server and 5 users, which is the minimum size, okay? And that runs about $900. Just keep that in mind. So I'm having this conversation up front about single users. They really don't like them, and they really want you to spend entry-level position with them at least $900 with the company. They have this outlier, which is a copy of FileMaker Pro. All it is a one-time license, perpetual license. $540 gives you a single copy. If you understand that $540 gives you one copy, or $900 gives you 5 copies in a server, you realize that there's a pretty steep discounting when you start to add people to it. That or the 540 is a deterrent, a deliberate deterrent, right? That's also why, because when we sell the training, we sell a single copy for a lot less that comes with the training and the copy of starting point. So understand that if you're a single user, that is a deployment consideration. You're a single person, you have a single file using it locally on your computer on Mac, Windows, or FileMaker Go on iOS. That's a single machine, local file deployment with no server, okay? So I'm gonna leave the single license, single person conversation alone. I've killed it now. We're all covered that part. So we're gonna talk about group or team licenses for your team, which starts, once again, the minimum size is 5. Can't buy 3, can't buy 4. It comes in 5 only as entry level point. So this is one of the issues that I run into. This is it's a little bit fuzzy. It's kind of hard to see, but this is a slide from Claris's slide deck about how to understand and buy licensing. So Claris licensing programs overview, okay? FileMaker Cloud is not licensing, okay? This is a license, this is a license, this is a license, this is a totally separate outlier product, right? With different rules on how it operates, right? So what I did is that this slide to me indicated to me that Claris, they don't articulate it well. And so what I did is I marked this up. So what ends up happening is that people confuse licensing and deployment. And so part of your job as a developer is to, or a business person, whatever in your organization, if you're listening to me, is to figure out how you want to roll FileMaker out. And mostly, so the choice is, initially it's, I'm one person, I have a single copy on my computer, and my deployment is me, myself, and I, and no server, that's it, okay? That's a deployment option. Then the other conversation becomes, oh, I want a server. Then your choice is one of 2 server options. It's going to be Claris provides a server for you, what they call Claris FileMaker Cloud. They call it Cloud. Or you have your own FileMaker server, which could be Mac, Windows, or Linux. They call that on-premise. And so what I want to do is I want to show you the website here real quick on this, and this is why it's so confusing. So before you decide the licensing program that's right for you, you really need to decide which path you're going to take. How is it going to be deployed, right? So I guess the one extra box over here would be, I'm a one-man band or one-woman band. I'm building it on my own solution or on my own computer, and I'm not sharing it with anyone, and that's it, right? So that's over here. I'm just going to leave that one alone, because anyone who's really going anywhere with FileMaker is going to share it with a team. I use it individually myself for some private projects, but I still put it on a server because I want the backups. I'm kind of like that. I like to have my stuff safe and secure. So these are the deployment options for your team. So this is where FileMaker, you just pay them money, and very simply, they build a server for you, and it's up on Amazon. They don't say it, but it's up on Amazon, and it runs kind of automatically, automagically, okay? It has limitations. The upside is that it's very simple to set up because they do it for you. They charge quite a bit for this. but it is one option. The other option is the conventional FileMaker server, Mac, Windows, or Linux. This one basically has, if FileMaker can do it, this will do it, right? This has other limitations, quite a few substantial limitations, and customers get into this and then they realize they've kind of driven into a one-way alley and they have to back out, right? It's kind of an ugly kind of conversation. We'll talk about that. So, but the first decision you have to make is deployment. So I am articulating to you the two deployment choices here. If we go to the Claris website and we look at their pricing, let's say, hey, let's get a price on this, okay? The first thing they say is pricing plan, Claris Connect or Claris FileMaker and Claris Connect. And so they lead you down this track right here, okay? What they are doing is they're leading you down the most expensive track that they offer because it's higher profitability for them. I get that. It's like going into a car dealership and they show you the premium XLS 55 model. It's like if you ever priced out like a car, like a minivan, like I love minivans. I love them. I love them. I have a bunch of them. There's 6 levels of minivan for Toyota. I prefer Toyota. Okay. The number 6 level minivan is like $80,000. It's got everything in it. And the number 1 level is maybe $28,000 and it's stripped down to the minimums. And I buy like the middle one somewhere. Well, if you went into a car dealership and they didn't show you nothing but the high-end premium $80,000 models, and then you had to like bribe the guy to show you around behind the building where they're hiding the other lower level models, that maybe that's all you need. That's what this website is doing, because it doesn't say, how do you want to deploy? It says, pay us this money, is the first thing out of their mouths, right? Whereas if you scroll down a little bit, which of course that requires you to move your finger, and depending on your age and bracket and what you expected the browser to do, you may not scroll down, right? Then they have single licenses, which is an outlier, and then on-premise server. So these are not, they're not saying this and they're not making it logical, and it's why people get confused that this is a deployment option, this is a deployment option, and this big thing up here is their expensive deployment option. So it's really these 3 here, and you could put the single license over here, right? If you wanted to have that conversation, which we already did. So that's kind of the rub with this. Now, Claris calls it, I call it FileMaker Cloud SaaS, software as a service. They take the hardware and the software, they put it together for you, and you're done. This one over here is just the software. So you've got to roll it out yourself or hire someone like Jacob Taylor, one of my guys, to build the server for you. And then it just kind of runs, and it's pretty much hands-free and generally very error proof. It works very, very well. But that being said, this is where you kind of have your own server. This is the Claris as a service. The rub with this one is that this is Mac, Windows, or Linux, but Claris calls this on-prem. It's their way of implying that this should only be used if it's in your building, on the premises of your office location. This one is the cloud one. So if you want cloud, if you want to be modern, if you don't want to be ancient with a rotary dial phone, right, then you're going to use their cloud one, which is way more money. Okay. This one right here, they deliberately mislabel it and call it on premise, because whenever we roll it out to the cloud, we use this one too. It's not on premise. We use very few on premise servers. I have one here to play with, but all the RCC servers are out in the cloud. They're on Amazon, probably not too far away from where these ones are at. So it's, instead of asking it this way, they change it the other way. Do we have questions on topic here right now?
Not terribly at the moment.
Okay, so this is the part where Jacob becomes more important, is that we're over here. And so we have this conversation. So really back over here was the conversation. But before you make a choice on this, people say, well, how do I choose? I said, man, glad you asked. It's really not hard to do. You have to ask, okay, one, do you have an IT support person, right, Jacob? This is where Jacob comes in. And do you have an IT support person, yes or no? And if they do, what is their attitude about helping you with FileMaker, right? What are the options for that? What are you likely to hear, Jacob, if you have a living IT person that returns your call, right? What are they likely to say one way or the other?
To be perfectly honest, most IT people don't like FileMaker. Not as a representation of where the product is, but a lot of IT people have been working with it for a long time, and it's it's annoying and hard to deal with and this sort of thing. And so they tell you, no, we don't want to help with FileMaker. Some of them, they started out with FileMaker or something like that, and maybe they like it, and so you get some support. But you're still going to have to deal with the further question of kind of which operating system they want to deal with. We have all of the options available to us, basically. So you have Windows, Mac, and Linux servers. Something for everybody, essentially.
Yeah, I think what I see a lot, and this goes back over 33 years, is that every IT person has, even I do, you have a predisposition towards stuff that you're familiar with, that that you can be successful with, right? And so you have some IT people who are Microsoft people. Ruben knows IT people who are Oracle people. And so the idea is that they might say, well, why are you using FileMaker? You should use Oracle. Or why are you using this? Use some other platform. Let's just assume that you understand the value and the benefit and the return on investment that FileMaker has. It's light years ahead of anything else. It just is. It's the ultimate ROI, return on investment tool. It's fantastic. That being said, your IT people may not give a shit, okay? And so their response to you is what we said last year. As what they say last year, I said, if you ask them for help, they might say, kiss my shit, right? We're not going to help you.
Yep.
And so that all has to be quacked out, unfortunately, but that's what it's going to be. So you either you have no IT help at all, or your IT help is kiss my shit, or the IT help then has a preference. They're going to help you, but they're going to choose an operating system. So it's really kind of one of 5 permutations. There is no IT person. They don't like you. Go die. Go away. Or they said, I like Linux. I like Windows. I like Mac. And so if they give you the Mac, Windows, Linux thing and they want to be involved, then you're going to go down this option right here. If you have no IT support or they don't like you, you have 2 choices. You can still go down this road and have someone like Jacob Taylor, or if you have a really top-notch FileMaker development company who has a dedicated server person or multiple people that do servers, then they can help you set up a server for you on this, okay? This one over here is what you're going to use if you don't have any elaborate needs and you don't have any IT support, then they're going to build the server for you over here. That's a reasonable tool, right, Jacob Taylor? I mean, what are the limitations over here? I guess we should mention those.
Yeah, correct. So if you don't need any server-side plugins, that's frankly, that's the really big one. There are also certain businesses. So for FileMaker Cloud, this is kind of it's a technical requirement in some sense, but it interacts badly with a business process. So to use FileMaker Cloud, you'd have to have a Claris ID. That's just an email and a password generally. However, for some businesses that doesn't work because they have, for example, seasonal labor or certain types of like rotating positions at certain times of year. And so the management on it is terrible and it doesn't work very well. And so those are like the 2 main big ones. Additionally, if you already have FileMaker of some kind and you want your web pages to talk to the server and stuff like that, it's not impossible, but exceedingly difficult to accomplish. And so we generally steer people the other way because you can use what you have on FileMaker server and just keep going. So.
Yeah, the big one is the issue of plugins, but more than that, it's instead of just saying plugins, for example, say you want offline synchronization or you want enterprise level replication, which we covered. You can't do that over here. And so what is this? Yeah. So there's conversation going over here on Discord a little bit about what is SaaS. So SaaS is software as a service. That's where you pay. For example, Slack. Slack is software as a service. They have a Slack server. They have Slack software. You don't see any of that crap. All you do is get a login and you use it. Same with Zoom, right? There are Zoom servers and all that kind of stuff. They handle that for you. That's software as a service. If you roll your own server and your own IT folks have your own server, whether it's in the cloud or it's in your building, and you put software in, that's not really software as a service. Software as a service is where you're going to build this and then resell it. So if Scott Kane is there, it looks like he's out today potentially, but some of you are building a vertical market solution, Moki, some of the other folks, you're building a vertical market solution and you're going to put the hardware together with the software and sell it as a flat rate kind of deal. That's definitely software as a service, right? So that's what Claris is doing. It makes the installation. Here's what happened with this over here. the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So when they started down this road, remember, FileMaker Cloud is software and then Amazon hardware. It started off as FileMaker Server, and it's very similar to FileMaker Server, almost identical, but it's kind of tuned for Claris's specific needs. But what happened is that they're dealing with Apple and Apple security, and Apple, for a wide variety of reasons, doesn't want to certify and validate other people's products to work on their server, right? So even though it says Claris has got a deal. Claris and Apple work to deal with Amazon to be in Amazon data centers. That's how they do this, right? And so one of the things is that Apple is very anal in a good way, I guess, about making sure their stuff is secure. And whenever FileMaker makes a new version of the product, it has to go through this huge security audit to make sure it can't be hacked, or at least hacked in a way that anyone knows about. And so they do this big software validation of it. Apple puts Claris through the ringer before they ship a product. And so that's why sometimes when a product is late, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if Apple rejected it because it was a security vulnerability. So this is a good thing. That being said, Apple is over here saying, well, it's going to be on an Apple-owned server on a part of the data center that's by Amazon, but maybe Apple rents entire racks or whatever they do in there. Maybe a third floor of the Amazon building is all Apple, right? Or whatever, however they do that. Then they're going to be like, well, are we going to trust 360works' product to be installed on there? Well, we have to go through a certification process. Well, screw that. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, time. So that's what happens. They don't want extra software loaded on here. So this arrow is in really kind of a bad spot. It got moved around. But if you confirm that you will need in the future plugins, which do like monkey bread stuff, which is great. I can't do synchronization, replication, that kind of stuff, then this is okay for you. It's basically Pro, Go, and WebDirect, and that's it. No web-facing action, no forms or people logging and getting information through a custom web page like PHP that talks to it. This can't do that, okay? We've had people say it does it. We've yet to see anyone actually do it, okay? It's a real hack. Jacobs wrestled with these guys. We finally gave up after months of trying to make that work. So this one over here does it. So that's kind of this issue. You have to make the decision. So it's a combination of IT support and what do you really need to do. If you really, really want to do mobile device synchronization, or maybe in the future, stuff like that, where the mobile devices go offline, they do stuff, they come back, and then the data goes uphill to them. You need to come over here. It doesn't matter that you might prefer this. The only way to get there is with this option over here, right? So that's what they call on-prem. Okay, if you choose this right here, this is going to turn into an annual user license subscription. And so a lot of times with FileMaker, that there's after we continue down from this decision, there's a couple choices of how you license or buy the software, right? Over here, there's basically one option. And what this option is basically you're going to count the number of people that are going to use it. And those people are unique names: Dick, Fred, Sally, Jane, Tom, Ruben, TK55678, if we ever see him again. These are specifically named people, okay? It's not user licensing, we'll get to this, is not concurrency, it's separate. So over here, you can't do a concurrency option. It's basically, if you have 12 people, unique individuals that will ever use it, even if they don't use it very much, you're gonna pay for a 12-pack of software over on this side. If you choose to go with FileMaker Server because you need all the flexibility, then you're going to have a choice. This is like the historical way of buying FileMaker. You can buy it with user licensing or concurrency or a site license. You have one of those three choices. And so I guess we could talk about that right now. We dive into this. FileMaker licensing. So we have three of these. There'll be three screens that'll come up. The first one's user licensing. So this is the whole idea of you have the uniquely named people, and they are going to use it. So it's if you have 58 employees and 38 of those employees are going to be using, or contractors or whatever, are going to be using the software, then you have to buy 38. It doesn't matter whether they're in there at one time or not. During an audit, by you buying this software, you basically essentially are agreeing that in the event of an audit, Claris can come to you and you have to produce that name of people, that list, those names. You should be able to produce that. Not that you will, I've never seen it happen, but you should be prepared to do that, if that makes sense, right? The concurrency licensing is exactly what it sounds like. It's like how many people will be in there at one time, the maximum number. This is 3 times the price of the user licensing. So if I buy if I have 50 people, okay, and I said, should I buy user licensing for 50 or should I buy concurrency for 50? Well, concurrency for 50 is 3 times the cost. It's 3 times the cost. I'm like, well, I'm not going to have 50 people in there simultaneously. Maybe I only have 25 people in there simultaneously. Well, if you buy 50 at the, I'm butchering this conversation, but the point is that it's cheaper if you have a real small fraction of your team that's logged in at one time, right? Jacob, am I saying that correct? You want to help me with this?
Yeah, correct. So the basic comparison that you can make is, so some businesses, for example, you've got 60 employees, right? But let's say, due to, we'll say, how your business works, only 10 of them are going to be in the database at a time. 60 people are going to access it. You got 60 copies of Pro, 100%, but 10 are going to be logged in at once. In that situation, we would recommend a concurrent license. The reason for that is because you're money ahead on that. You will save money versus getting 60 user licenses in that case, which you'd otherwise be required to do. So if you can say, with a little extra, maybe you don't get a 10 seat, you get a 12 in case it bumps up, some consideration like that. But in general, you can save a lot of money that way. But but because it's 3 times the cost, you have to run those numbers ahead of time. There are also, as I mentioned, I think earlier, there are certain businesses that it doesn't work so well with a user licensing because they have rotational labor or seasonal labor, stuff like that. And in those situations, actually concurrence can make a lot more sense, especially if you have like certain situations with iPads out in the field and things like that. So.
Yep. So that's this issue with licensing. So basically, if you have 10 concurrents is the same as buying 30 user licenses, if that makes sense, right? So that's that kind of trade-off. You have to be below a third, right, for it to make sense. All right, cool. So site license. This is interesting. This is basically where Claris says they're gonna go into public records and see how many people you have working for you. Okay, and I've run into Claris with this years ago. They're not, it's if you get a really great deal on site licensing, but you have to license everyone in the organization. Well, what about the janitor who cleans the toilet? Yeah, if he works for you, either as a contractor or as a full-time employee or part-time employee, you got to license that person too. Well, he cleans the toilet. He doesn't use FileMaker. Doesn't matter. It's not how it works, right? If Claris is, for example, I remember this deal where State of California, a certain government agency, I'm not going to repeat their names, that organization was stealing thousands of copies of FileMaker, and they were turned in by their own employees for stealing thousands of copies of FileMaker. And this is 15, 20 years ago, old story. But what happens is Claris goes, well, they're supposed to have a site license and they're only paying us for 800 or 1,000 people. They go online. The site license says that this department in California has 8,500 employees. Well, they're ripping us off out of 7,000 copies of FileMaker they should buy. So it turned into this big legal lawsuit, and Claris, being part of Apple, turned the Apple attorneys loose on them. And that state agency decided that they were going to then legally comply with the piracy of software, and they ended up working a deal back and forth, but they ended up paying $16 a copy per seat, but they had to pay $16 or $18. It was per year, right? Super sweet deal, no one else could get. But then they had to buy that times 8,500 copies or something like that, right? Whatever the deal was. And so, yeah, so the site license is very much all the people there. So you have to see which of these 3 makes sense. So once again, you have the choice of user licensing, which is specific people, concurrency, which is the maximum number at a given time, but it's 3 times, this is 3 times the cost of that on a user-to-user basis. So 3 user licenses equals 1 concurrent license in terms of pricing. Makes sense? Then site license is cheaper than that, both of these, but you have to license everyone. Okay, makes sense? So pretty straightforward stuff.
We got 2 questions.
Okay, what's the questions?
Does FMS stop accepting connections after the license limit has been reached?
Generally, yes. Generally, yes. I've
Yep.
seen times where for concurrency, it absolutely does. And for user licenses, it should. I have a site license for RCC. Uh, and every year or two, whatever, I have to adjust it up or down 1 or 2 because our staffing goes up and down. But we're always pretty much between 25 and 30 people, so we're right in that spot. But yeah, the FileMaker server will cap you.
Related question to that: how is user licensing limits enforced? Can I have a different set of users assigned to different solutions as long as more than 5 people don't log in at the same time? Am I good? Assuming a 5-user license.
That's describing a concurrency use case.
Yeah, he's describing okay, so what it is, they're describing a concurrency use case, but they're paying for user licenses. Listen, if you're asking me how to cheat the program, which I know some of you are doing, then I'm just going to simply tell you that, Claris has enough problems where they make a mess out of stuff. If you're deriving value from the product, please go pay for it. Okay, if you're deriving value and it's helping you, go pay for it. Strictly speaking, that's why they reserve the right to audit you. Okay, and so if you have user licensing, and they're going to say, okay, you buy a 10-pack, then what are the 10 names of the people, right? And you give them those names, and then they can see what goes on with the server. They don't have access to your database, but the server's phone home once a week with basic statistics and stuff. And if it shows that there's 1 billion people logged onto your server, and somehow you're above or over that 10 user limit, right? That those 10 unique people, they're going to know about it. Whether they will pursue that or not, historically they haven't, but they're becoming more, because the piracy's been so bad, they're getting more and more aggressive about it as the time goes on, right? So, yeah, so you should play by the rules, and if not, then just understand that someday you're probably going to get pulled over and written a speeding ticket. Sooner or later, if you speed long enough down the freeway, someday you're going to get busted, right? So just how that works. Okay, so you're going to figure out the deployment type, which was the most essential thing to learn, and then discuss the licensing. So there's this idea of annual or perpetual. Once again, the graphic right here just lost its mind. So if you're doing annual or perpetual, so the idea if you buy not the SaaS model, so once again, we're talking about purely about, I'm going to go backwards here. If we're talking about just this side over here, we have a number of purchasing options. Over here, essentially, there's no concurrency over here. There's no site license over here. It's just user licensing, okay, on this over here. It's very, very simple. In fact, what I'll do is I will show this to you. I'm going to jump ahead right here. This is the Claris website that people can use to buy these products. And so this right up here is the licensing interface for buying the on-premise or the normal FileMaker server, Mac, Windows, or Linux. You can buy a new licenses. You can add additional licenses. There is a potential minor discount for education nonprofit. Most people don't qualify for that, and a lot of times it doesn't. There's no discount at all. Used to be in the old days, you get good discounts for education, not so much anymore. So you choose these two things here, but then you have user licensing, concurrency licensing, or site licensing, the 3 once again. And then you have the choice of annual or perpetual. Notice down here, this is the FileMaker Cloud Software as a Service. This is, you don't see these 2 items here. You don't see them at all because they're hard coded, they're hard set, they're not changeable. Down here, it's only user licensing and it's only annual. Follow what I'm saying? It's only user licensing, it's only annual. Okay. Now they'll let you buy annual in more than 1 year. That's fine. But up here you have these choices of concurrency or site, and then you have this annual perpetual. So annual is where it's you pay 1/3 the price, and it's of this suggested retail price. You pay it 1/3 every year, and you pay it every year, forever and forever and forever. And if you don't pay it, then you have to uninstall the software. It's like a subscription. It literally is an annual. You should say that word annual subscription. Perpetual is the old model where you buy it once and you never buy it again. The problem is that I ran into people. I've told you this story before. I had another state agency who deals with roads. Oh, did I say out loud? I'm sorry. They said they're using FileMaker 12. Can I come help them? The reason they're on FileMaker 12 is because they bought it perpetually. They never wanted to give Claris any money. They call me in the last couple of months and they want me to come in there and help them not upgrade, but add new features to the product. We're talking software that has security vulnerabilities, all sorts of issues. A lot of the features that we have in terms of slide panels and tab panels and invisibility and all this other stuff that I teach you on doesn't exist that far back in time. And so literally you have to find someone who has to use this like hobbled version of FileMaker, which has security vulnerabilities, which won't even run on a current Macintosh, right? Of course, I'm sure the state agency is all Windows, right? But you get the idea. You don't want to be that person that's that old on the software. So the Perpetual is kind of this road to hell, right? You get 1 year of free maintenance with it. So it means that you get all the updates. So when you buy an annual for 1 year or Perpetual for 1 year, the first year, they look very much the same. This one's much cheaper. But then after the second year, you keep paying for the annual and you keep getting, as long as you're under paying for that, you're going to get all the updates, new updates, major updates, minor updates. The Perpetual, you get updates for 1 year. All the updates for 1 year, then it shuts off. And so, well, that doesn't sound very good. Well, you can come over here and buy the maintenance at 20% a year. So this is 30% of the SRP. This is 20% of the SRP. It's cheaper, but this is full price. This is 1/3. So there's this, if you start on the annual subscription, it's cheaper and it's very consistent every year. If you do Perpetual, it's a big cost, and then it goes down to 20% a year. That's if you answer the phone from the salesperson, either my salesperson or some other salesperson, and you pay the 20% a year. But since no one is desperately whining and crying about it, you're like, well, I could think of other uses for that 20% money. Maybe it's several $1,000s, right? I could think of other uses for several grand. I'm not going to do it. So then you don't have maintenance, then you don't get the updates, then you're like the state agency that's slowly going to wind itself backwards to where you're using FileMaker 12 and everyone's on FileMaker 35 or something, right? Not a good place to be, right? Jacob, security. I mean, don't you think security updates kind of a big?
They have recently published and published security vulnerabilities in the product in Stream N19. So they got a published. There's a CVE, which we don't need to explain here, but that's the official unique number identifier thing for a publicly known software vulnerability that has been reported to the vendor and resolved by them. As a short description of it, one of those was fixed by Claris within the last 6 months. So in the product.
So the security stuff matters. So if you're paying annually, then it's a budgetable item. You know what the cost is going to be. 2, it keeps you up to date. You don't have to update. You don't have to update, but you have the legal license and the installers and everything to update if you want, right? So that's kind of essentially how this stuff works. So once again, I think it gets confusing a little bit with people, but the biggest decision out of the gate you have to make is this whole idea. If I come back over here, is this one right here. What is your IT support? And this arrow is driving me nuts. Let me move that. All right, thank you. Do you need any plugins? You're going to need any sort of web access to it from a regular web page, not web direct, but a regular web page. Synchronization, any of that kind of stuff. If you need that, you have to slide back over this way. Very, very important. So Ed Bradley says PCI DSS, which is the credit card processing standards by the credit card companies, say that they and HIPAA require the current OS and software, right? So if you're doing any sort of credit card processing within FileMaker, you're required by the credit card companies to stay up to date. If you're doing any medical related data in the United States, you have to stay up to date as well, right? So good point. David Angel says, what is the price on premise per user? I don't know. We could why don't we go look at it, right? I mean, they're not going to sell you one, but we could try to figure it out. So you said on premise. So you go to the Claris website. Once again, if you talk to my sales guy, we can get you a discount on the prices you're going to see. But if you come here, you're going to pay full price. So it's up to you how you want to handle that. If you want to reach out to us, it's supported at rcconsulting.com. So I click on premise over here. It says, yeah, it might be $15 per user per month billed annually. So that's kind of like their generic number, right? But if you click over and say buy it, then you're going to pick your country, and then you're going to say you're going to buy it annually. And remember, in those right here, the minus sign ain't going down any lower than 5. So that's your minimum engagement, right? So it's $5 per user per month, but that's not the way it works, right? It's going to be $900 out the door as your lowest entry level price. So the server tracks individual users regardless of solution. Ken, yes, it doesn't really care about solutions. Ken, if you're talking about SBA, then that's a separate conversation. We're not really addressing that here specifically, right? But the server doesn't really care about what FileMaker, because at the end of the day, okay, let's back up. If you're in FileMaker, let me see if I can bring this up real quick. This is my personal FileMaker. This is 19.4.2. This is my server. There it goes. I'm going to sign in. So this is FileMaker server. Mac, Windows, or Linux, it looks the same. It's also interfaced almost identical to the Claris cloud server, the SaaS one, okay? If I come over here to databases and you look at the server here, you will not see the word solution in here anywhere, okay? The word solution is a term used by the development community and by Claris to imply it implies more or less a single complete solution. FileMaker server doesn't know what a single complete solution is. It has no way of understanding that this file might be attached to that, or these 3 files are part of one solution, or this one and this, or maybe these are all individual solutions. It doesn't track that. It doesn't know that. All it knows is it has database files, which can comprise one or more solutions, and it has the users, right, connected to the system, right? And it knows what they're logging into, but it doesn't really know. You don't really define solutions, right? So because of that, it's can't quantify it, right? So for long-term, ideally, annual license is better. Strictly speaking, after 5 or 6 years, a perpetual license, if you pay the maintenance, is better. If you are a diligent individual who is happy to pay the fees. However, as Alex is one of my staff, I'm going to tell you that customers, I'm warning everyone generically, but I'm warning Alex here specifically, customers tend to not want to pay the maintenance, and so they get behind. And so then we end up with these questions like, hey, Alex, can you work on this FileMaker 11 solution or FileMaker 12 solution, right? Or 13 solution or 16. And I don't even have a computer that'll hardly run FileMaker 16 here, right? And so this state agency said, hey, can you come help us? And I'm like, A, you're a state government, so getting paid is going to be difficult. And B, you're basically writing dinosaurs to work like Fred Flintstone from 5,000 years ago, right? So the annual is better to keep people up to date, to ensure that if they have a bug, listen, if you have a bug with FileMaker, and this is so funny, we run into people online all the time who do this. I'm outraged. It's a bug in FileMaker, and this is the bug. And so they say, and then the bug affects FileMaker 16v.0.9 or something like that. Claris, let me help you with all this stuff. Claris does not give a shit about your bug. I'm not being mean. This is business. Okay. If you have a bug and you have a current license that you're paid for, so you're under subscription somehow or under maintenance, and you find a bug with 19.0, 19.4 or 19.5, they care. If it's anything older than 19.4, they don't care at all, 0. Okay. So if you want to be able to report bugs, if you want to have people take you seriously, if you want to have your security issues addressed, where do I start with all the benefits of staying up to date? Right? It doesn't mean that we use 19.5 immediately. We told all you folks not to install it. We did it very diplomatically, but we said, hey, don't be the guinea pig in the building to test out FileMaker Server 19.5.1. And one or two of you did this. Maybe you're using on a test machine, but it was all sorts of problems that no one knew about. And then Claris is rushing through a fix. That's why we said don't. So you don't have to upgrade the latest one, but you have to be kind of close within striking distance, right? If someone's on, at what point, Jacob, do you tell them to upgrade? Say their server's stable, everything's kind of working, and they're on, say, 18. Do you tell them to upgrade to 19?
Currently, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And without qualification.
Okay. So then the next question, if they're on 19.0, do you tell them to upgrade?
Yes.
19.1, do you tell them to upgrade?
Yes.
19.2. Whatever, do you tell them to upgrade?
It's a maybe, but a probably.
There you go.
We're getting into the softness.
There you go. And so that is within, and 19.2 is within the last year and a half, right?
Mhm.
And so that's that range where you want to stay within striking distance. How do you make sure you stay within striking distance? You have to have a license to the current product by the annual. By the annual, if you want the site license, by the annual concurrency, right? But the point is that to stay annual, so that way when they have new versions, you don't have to go, oh God, do I get that one for free or not? Oh no, we didn't pay the bill. And then it gets away from you, right? It's like the penguin video where the penguin is on the iceberg and it breaks off and it starts going from the South Pole up, and the iceberg melts and melts and melts. And if you're pretty close, like you're on 19.0, jumping to 19.5 or 4 may not be that big of a deal, but then 18 is a little farther and 17 is a little farther. If certain state agency wants to upgrade from FileMaker 12, I don't know how much is going to break. And I'm certainly not going to promise them I'm a professional consultant. And Ruben said, I'm going to blame it on Ruben. Ruben said that it'll work no problem. And if there's a problem, here's Ruben's phone number. I don't want to be the person on the end of that phone to guarantee it's going to work. I pretty much guarantee if you're on 18 and you jump to 19.5, it's going to work. And if not, we will kind of work through to remedy the issue for you. But at some point, we don't make those promises, right? We just don't. So calling Ruben, there you go. Is there even a point for annual versus perpetual? Is break point? Yeah, 5 or 6 years. But once again, if you boot perpetual, you have to write a big check up front, right? You have to write a big check up front. If you do annual, then it becomes every year you're going to break out the credit card checkbook. You're going to pay every year. Listen, a lot of this is about, once again, Alex who keeps asking this question. It's almost like someone who's, I don't recommend the perpetual for most people because they're going to weasel and they're not going to pay an upgrade, and they're going to be the penguin on the iceberg floating away. Right. So as a consultant, I don't want customers exposed to danger and
and I have one thing to contribute here. So the one very specific time, and there might be two of them, I can think of a second one, but the one very specific time where I will tell a client to get perpetual is where they want to pay money because they highly value owning the box, right? They're writing a check for that older version of the software. For some of our customers, and it is a very small number of them, to be perfectly clear, that's important to them. They don't want an annual whatever. They're like, no, I'm going to buy it, and they'll come back actually in like 2 years and buy another perpetual. It's setting money on fire, but that's a thing that they value, that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is.
I'm okay with that. Claris is okay with it, but the rub is that a lot of people, Claris has got whole volumes of people who own FileMaker 14, 15, and 16 who didn't upgrade because they didn't feel like they had to, and it kind of kept working, right? So that also doesn't encourage Claris to help you and support you. So there are a couple questions about Claris Connect. So I'm going to just bring this up loosely. So someone asked, what is Claris Connect? Claris Connect is, well, let's just talk about it, what it is today. And maybe someday it will change. But as of today, right now, it's a very, very, very separate thing that you can buy if you want to connect FileMaker through an API to another service. So for example, there are, like, we do APIs to like talk to PayPal. So like if some of you buy my training from me, my copy of FileMaker talks to PayPal, and when you run a credit card, PayPal processes your credit card. Even if you don't have an account, doesn't matter. You have a credit card, it takes your money, goes into and moves it through the piggy bank and all that kind of stuff, and we get a notification to FileMaker. FileMaker can talk to it. The process of writing the communication to talk to an external service generally is, if I bring up the continuing this skill level thing, integrating with an outside third-party service, you need to be probably intermediate and a half in here or better to do that. So there's a lot of you on Discord who are really quite good at writing APIs. You use Postman as a software. It's basically doing more technical programmer kind of stuff, and having FileMaker talk to outside service, talk to PayPal, talk to DocuSign, talk to other services, talk to the DMV, find out, you can type in some information on a car's VIN and come back with the information on that vehicle. If you have enough security credentials, I can put someone's driver's license in and go to the government and come back with your driving and criminal records, right? I don't have access to that, but I know companies who do have access to that. It's all done through an API. So Claris Connect is kind of this pre-canned effort by Claris to build this API service, and it hasn't been overly successful, largely because the market was already kind of saturated with options that were already in market. Claris did it. They did it. It's one of those deals where I say, if you've heard me talk about when you're making a business decision, don't stare in the mirror and tell yourself how wonderful you are and make a business decision based upon your self-talk, okay? Your self-talk can be overly negative, right? We know about this, right? This is kind of more and I'm going into psychology, Margaret, moment, right? Margaret's expertise area. But people have bad self-talk, negative self-talk, or excessively, stupidly positive self-talk. Like, oh, I'm Richard and I'm so beautiful and I'm the smartest FileMaker person ever. And there's probably people out there who think that, but I'm just fictionally doing this for you. I'm so beautiful. Whatever I do always works. I make so much money. I'm so brilliant. Oh, and what do I want to do? I'm going to make a product that allows FileMaker to connect to API services. And what do I think? Oh, I think it's so brilliant because I would use it if I was a programmer. So that was the genesis of Claris Connect. And so it came out, it was priced, and it was built. So it's a little on the pricey side. It's missing some essential features, and I don't personally use it. So I'm really good about telling you the products I love. I love Monkey Bread. I love 360works. I love the base FileMaker products. I don't use Claris Connect. There's other third-party services, or you can hire a developer, like I hire one of my mid-level people to write this stuff up for me. So that's what Connect is. It's theoretically an ability. We have, I think, RCC, I have 30 some odd engineers. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of customers. I have 1 or 2 customers that use Connect. Is Connect really that much easier than connect the IP yourself? Well, okay. So if you go to Connect, yeah. If versus writing an API, like the productive computing folks just came out with some training on how it's, while we're doing some basic intermediate training, they came out with some training just on some API stuff. Most developers who are at the senior level here already have a predisposition over here. They already have a predisposition to getting into stuff and doing it. This is the people who are not afraid of JavaScript or SQL, things like that. Ruben, you're kind of people, right? So that's Connect. So what Claris wants to do in the future is, and this is kind of way down the road and very loosely, I'm going to loosely describe this for everyone, is FileMaker Cloud as a service. They want to bolt Connect in here and bolt Claris Studio in here. So they want to bolt in, if I take this and I duplicate it and I say Claris Studio, right? You got that. And then you add over here Claris Connect, right? So then this is kind of their strategy. They're trying, because a lot of people, we're not directing people into here too much, and this is where they make the most money. So they're trying to juice this up. So if they can bolt this together, they can fix this so it's good. This is already mostly okay, and expand on it. Then what they're trying to do is build up this option over here to make it better and better and better, so it's more people can come in here and have more of a choice, right? That makes sense. I'm all for them making a fantastic, better product. Make it so awesome that you force me to come buy it. That's my strategy in life. Make a product that's so awesome, you're going to force me to break out the credit card and pay you for it. I would love that to be the case over here. I would love that to be the case. So that's what they're trying to do. So they keep having these like little separate things they're working on. They're trying to bolt it all together. When does it all come together? I don't know. We have 15 static users. One person uses the same computer all the time. Each, this little engine house is the location, has 2 computers that will have 5 to 6 different users on each of 3 shifts. We have a couple apps that connect the web page through WebDirect. I'm not sure our licensing is the most cost effective. This is maintenance, right? Yeah, it's FileMaker maintenance. So you're in the maintenance. So what Ed has got right here, for those of you who are looking at this, he's looking at, he already bought Perpetual. Fine. Perpetual's great, as long as you keep up on the maintenance. So here he is, he's buying the maintenance, right? So if you're already to this point where you're buying maintenance, this is as cheap as it's going to get, right? if that makes sense. Tier 4 is a bigger price discount, right? Which is great. Concurrencies.
And
I don't get why the concurrency is cheaper than.
It's quantity. There's 25 concurrents, 37 users.
So that's quantity 37, and so you're buying both of these. So you're buying 37. Yeah, we would take this offline with you, but basically what I'll generically for everyone here. I mean, Ed, we're going to take this offline to talk to you about it, but generically, I would simply say that I like the fact that Ed bought the Perpetual. He's been investing it for a while, and he's paying the maintenance, whatever the maintenance looks like here, whether it's concurrent or individual named users. So he has 37 named users and 25 concurrencies. I need to look at this to determine if this makes sense for him, but I'm just going to applaud him for thank you for buying the maintenance, staying up to date. Thank you for doing that. That would be, I know that's not the answer you're looking for, but if you're in Perpetual and you've already got past the big purchase, then it's going to be the cheapest way to keep going. Now, whether you're doing concurrency or users, you have to decide on that, right? So,
Claris offers multi-year discounts when we renew. Does RCC also do that?
Yeah, we basically offer what Claris offers. We have we have a certain amount of maneuvering room on the discount we can provide. Sometimes it's quite a bit, sometimes it's very little. Depends on the situation. But yeah, we do multi-year. So this caused another problem. Let me talk about this real quick. So I have a nice gentleman who has been a great customer of ours. He's up in Canada, and I couldn't figure out about a month ago. He got really pissed off at my sales guy, and no one could figure out really what the problem was. And if he's there, he's listening. My greatest apology. So we didn't even understand why he was mad until he got on the phone with the engineers and got out the calculator and did this. And what I realized, it was just the way Claris markets the product. So what they do is they say, hey, if you buy a 3-year deal, you'll get 20. They'll say something like you'll get 25% off. Well, being a straightforward math person, you would say, okay, well, if 3 years of FileMaker would be this amount, and then I'm going to pay 0.75 of that or something like that, right? So 75% of whatever that is. Well, when Claris does stuff like that for you, you have to read the fine print. And my sales guy is just repeating what Claris says. What it is that you're going to pay full price on the first year, and then on the second year, you might get 15% off. And then the third year, you get like 25% off of that 1 year. So it's like one of those deals where it says, that you see a deal on sale on cars. This car is only $19,999. And it says 3 like this, and this is their serial numbers, right? So it's kind of a little bit of a sales tactic / weasel thing, right? It's technically accurate in so much as that it's an incomplete sentence. Yeah, it's 25% off, ... of the rest of the sentences of the third year. It's 15% off the first year, 25% off the second year or the third year. And so, yeah, it's kind of a just be aware of that. So when you look at the deal, what they'll do is they'll say, hey, would you be interested in a 3-year quote? Then you'll get the quote back and you'll see what that looks like, right? And if you do the math, you'll be like, how the hell, what kind of math is this? Some like not normal math. It's weird salesperson math, right? So that's what happens with that. So, so I'm instructing my salesperson that when he does that in the future to be very specific about where the 25% applies. So anyway.
We got a question from YouTube that I want to answer real quick. Is in custom SSL certificates, can I use a different SSL certificate?
What does that mean?
Different from different provider, I guess, I assume. There's a 90-second delay on that, so you're not going to get a timely answer. Why don't you answer the question of what SSL certificates you can use on this over here?
All of them. Yes.
All of them?
There isn't a constraint anymore. There was a historic list, an allow list. There might even be a historical version of that document still up on the Claris help site.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
There were 6 of the certificate authorities, as they're called, places that you'd buy an SSL from, that were specifically validated by Claris. That used to matter in now ancient versions of the FileMaker Server Pro Go product. In 2022, it does not. That consideration is not relevant anymore. The one constraint that still absolutely exists with FileMaker Pro and Server is, and it's a recommendation, you can do it, it's technically possible, we just don't recommend it to clients, is, for example, a Let's Encrypt certificate. Those are wonderful because they're free. Also, you have to automatically reboot and reissue the SSL every basically 60 days approximately, and you need to do that in a generally automatic fashion, and that is more or less possible depending on what platform you're on. So, and there's other considerations that go into that. For example, as we tell everybody, don't automatically reboot FileMaker Server because you can crash your files on accident, and so that's the primary consideration and why we tell people not to do it. Claris could write code that would allow us to do this automatically and reliably, but that doesn't exist yet. So when it does, I will obviously be the first on our live stream screaming about it because that would be very exciting. But,
You're talking about Let's Encrypt, what you're doing?
Yeah, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't listening. I was actually looking at other questions
Yep.
here. So,
They could like build support for something like that into the product. It would require work on Claris's part essentially, but they could do that. I don't believe anything like that's very high on their feature list currently.
Okay.
So
Martin's asking about Claris Studio. I mentioned it right here. I don't know when that question came in, and we're at the top of the hour already. Wow. Okay, that went really fast. So Claris Studio is what I would consider an alpha prototype. If you play with it, you watched us demonstrate it. It is slow and missing huge features if it were to be shipped today. If they add a bunch of features to it and beef it out, then it might be great. So that's a big if, right? It's a big if, right? All I've seen is an alpha prototype of how it might work. So Martin says, what about Claris Studio? It is basically a web front-end editor for FileMaker. Kind of, not really. Yes, but it's beyond super. You watched our presentation on this, right? Like a month and a half ago, where we did this, we showed you. Why doesn't they integrate this into FileMaker? They are integrating it. I mean, that's what you saw was integrated into FileMaker, right? I mean, we demonstrated that, right? I don't understand the question. If you watched our demo, you showed us building a web form, submitting data, seeing the data in FileMaker, and even we wrote a basic synchronization to move it from table to table in FileMaker, so it's integrated with FileMaker. When I said integrated into FileMaker, I meant why is it a separate product? Okay, so Claris Studio is a separate product because it is a SaaS offering. It's the software and the hardware together. The Claris Studio is a database engine, a web server, and a public access point for people to access it. That Claris cannot sell you an add-on to FileMaker that will do what that does. Real quick, so when you have a FileMaker server, it has to, and you access it, and you're accessing it from away from your office or network, it has to be on a machine that has a static address, and the network is set up to allow traffic to that machine. A web server is the same thing. And so if you want to sell, listen, no one likes to set up for us to go to, so for example, let me back up, let me talk about this. Just give me seconds. I think this will be useful for the more beginning people, the more advanced people. This is a good question by Martin. So if I go to fmtraining.tv, okay, this is a web page, okay? It really has nothing to do with FileMaker. However, if I come over to a part of this web page, this is all static content. If I come over and press this button right here, this is all HTML, static content, except for this section right here, which is driven out of FileMaker. In order for this to happen, FileMaker, the server software, has to talk to a web server. There's some configuration there. It's not necessarily easy. It's easy for Jacob, but it's harder for me, and I tend to screw it up, and it takes me a long time to do it, like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours, where Jacob does it in 15 minutes, so we always get someone to help us. So this server right here that's driving this is really a web server. It's a Windows or Linux machine, doesn't matter. And then there next to it is a FileMaker server that's a Windows or Linux machine. Could be Mac, but these are all Amazon, and Amazon doesn't really do Macs, right? So it's Windows or Linux. So these are two servers that they're sitting up in the cloud, right? And they're talking to each other, and then they're shooting the data down to you. Claris knows that setting that up there is a pain in the ass. It's hard to configure. People need it. So what they did is said, hey, let's build this Claris Studio thing where we'll build this thing up in the cloud. It'll be a service that people can subscribe to. It allows people to build a web page, and it also talks to FileMaker. If they just built it into FileMaker, you'd have the same problem. You'd have to go through this whole setup process. You would have solved nothing. You can already do everything that Claris Studio does. We do it today. But it's harder for your basic person to do it and set it up. So Claris Studio, the idea is that you take someone who doesn't know how to configure the Windows server with the command line and the blah, 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 and the commands in the config./Apache, blah, 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 all that kind of config that goes on up here. You don't have to worry about it. It's just a service. You pay them some money and magically turns on. That's what they wanted to do. And then you still have FileMaker, right? And through FileMaker or FileMaker Server, it can talk and get to that. So the whole idea behind that diagram that was here is that they're bundling, they're going to end up putting all these items together here, and then and so whereas this item over here, say, is about, and this is very loose number, $15 per user per month. Right now, this right over here is, I think they're running around $39 per user per month. And the CEO of Claris has said very much that their target price for this spot over here is more like $49 or $59 per user per month. So that is what they're trying to do, is to juice this up and make it awesome. And if they can make it so awesome that I feel compelled to pay $49 per user per month, then that's great. But that's their goal. And I laud the goal. I think they're on the right track. So over here, still FileMaker. It's still everything else that you have, but it's got all this extra awesomeness. All right. Margaret, you have questions? We're good?
I think that we should be good. So you can feel free to roll the credits.
There we go. See ya.